Hi, SOTA writers. It's Jesi Vega here for our creative writing YouTube video number 3 during the time of the coronavirus. Um, this is the first video that I actually haven't been totally nervous before doing, so I think I'm getting more comfortable. I'm definitely getting more comfortable doing this. I've also been getting really inspired lately, reading some great books about writing, and doing some writing of my own. So I was pretty bummed because last week's video hasn't even been uploaded yet. So maybe you'll get 2 for the price of 1 this week. So one of the things that I did this week as I was preparing for this video is I took a look at what I have learned from teaching you, my SOTA students, for the last year and a half. And also I teach senior citizens at a retirement community. So I put together everything that I've learned from teaching and made a list, or basically like a document about what I think goes into good writing. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to present you with an exercise to do this week, which, as always, you can send to me. And if you do, and if you're okay with me reading it, I will read it next week. I'm still looking forward to receiving some written pieces from you guys, and I'm also going to try and see if I can get into the Microsoft 360 into the Teams and connect with you because I miss you a lot. So here are the elements of good writing. I did not invent all of this, but this is what I've picked up from my experiences from having been a playwright and a screenwriter, and now from teaching you all fiction. And for those of you who never had me, who've only had me this semester, you may not know that I never really considered myself a fiction writer, even though I was a screenwriter and a playwright, and those things were fictional. But in terms of writing straight fiction, short story, or novels, those were never really my mediums of choice. So it's been exciting to get to learn something completely new through teaching it to you. So the elements of good writing, I have 16, I believe, that I've listed here. First, we have vocabulary. So having a great vocabulary is an excellent beginning for being a writer. And last week I shared that you should always have a dictionary that you're looking through. So that's the first key to having a good vocabulary. There's also keeping a list of words you like that you found from things that you've read. That's one of the main places that I learn new words from, just from things that I'm reading. Grammar and punctuation, number 2. There's no way around this. You've got to know your grammar and punctuation. I'm not an English teacher, so I don't teach that in my classes, but that's not to say that it's not important. So if writing is important to you, it's important to know what the rules are. Even if you want to break them, you got to know what they are. And also, without good grammar and punctuation, you don't know what you're communicating to people, and chances are you're not communicating what you want to communicate if your grammar and punctuation aren't right, at least in some sense of the word. Number 3, element of good writing, sentence structure. There's a bunch of, rules of thumb and rules for writing good sentences. Don't use the passive tense. Don't say the phone was picked up by Jesi. You could say Jesi picked up the phone. But yeah, there are seemingly infinite ways to structure sentences, and it's an amazing level at which to play with your writing. And that's a level at which we look at sentences when we're in class together, but I don't really teach very much about sentences, though that may change in the future. Sentence length. So we have short sentences, and we have very long sentences that can go on for lines and lines and have clauses and semicolons, commas. Sometimes they're run-ons. Sometimes they're just really interesting sentences. So yeah, sentence length is an element of good writing, knowing how to master that. Descriptive and sensory language that uses all 5 senses. We look at that a lot in our class. Descriptive language reflects feeling, it creates feeling. It's super important. Less important in a screenplay, for instance, or a play. in which case those things can come out through performance and visuals, but when you're writing fiction, you need to have the descriptions come out through your language. Figurative language, metaphors, similes, hyperbole, personification. You've probably learned all of these. I hope you've learned them all in English over the years. But having mastery of those is really powerful in terms of varying the kinds of language you use and bringing color to your fiction. Another element of good writing, number 7, story structure. Having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Having a hero or heroine's journey. Having desires, obstacles, stakes. Having characters that change from the beginning to the end. In the beginning of teaching you guys, I worked a lot on story structure, but one of the things that I've learned is story structure is built on being a good, like a good story has a good story structure, but even before you look at structure, you've got to look at your actual ability to write. And if that's not strong, it doesn't matter what kind of structure you put in, it's still not going to be an effective piece of work. So structure is important, but also even below structure or primary to structure is your ability to use language and write. Element number 8, dialogue. Can you make different speech patterns for different characters? If you're interested in dialogue, if you're interested in being a screenwriter or playwright, or even putting dialogue into your pieces, which is you can put dialogue into any piece, record people talking and transcribe it for practice, or just listen when people talk and you could take notes on what they say. Another element of good writing, number 9, is conflict. We've got internal conflict, external conflict. Place and setting. So environment also reflects feelings. It can reflect a story, it can create a story. I'm always a huge fan of vividly portrayed settings in fiction. So yeah, practice describing environments is important, like whether it's your present environment, remembered environment, an imaginary environment. Being able to create an environment is important to your fiction. Character. Characters should be three-dimensional human beings, not black and white, not stereotypes, but authentic characterizations. Element number 12, pacing. How do you want your reader to feel when they're reading your piece? And how does your pacing contribute to that or take away from it? That's something that you should ask. So we have things that are fast-paced, which are generally something that's in an action genre. And then things that are slower paced, which can be more meditative or contemplative, closer to poetry sometimes. So pace is something, it's always there, and you just want to be aware of what is the pace you're writing at, and how does that impact your reader, and is that the impact that you want to have. Another element of good writing is mastering genre. So one thing that I have loved about working with young people, with you guys, is that you're not afraid of genre. You love to write in fantasy and science fiction and romance. Like you'll really write about anything. And as people mature as writers, sometimes they get more interested in being innovative or literary. And those things are wonderful, but they're not the end all and be all for when it comes to storytelling and writing. So yeah, understanding what genre you're writing in and really learning the conventions of genre is part of mastering good writing. Another element of good writing is setting tone or mood and emotion. Some writers are naturally like too emotive, some are too restrained. So one thing to learn about yourself is where do you fall on that spectrum? And where do you want to fall? And what work do you need to do to set the right kind of tone? This week, my family and I watched the Netflix, no, Amazon Prime movie, Sella and the Spades. Didn't really like it, but it was excellent at tone and mood. It was kind of like all tone and mood, but But that's okay sometimes if that's what you're going for, but it's something to pay attention to for sure. Another element of your writing, theme. What do you know about the world? What do you want to share? What are you trying to say? Sometimes going into a project, you know what your theme will be. Sometimes you don't. I used to start from theme, but I discovered that for me, the theme is actually what surprises me. It's the thing that comes out of what I'm writing that I didn't know that I had to say until I wrote it. And then number 16, element of good writing, voice. So it's an elusive thing sometimes for some writers, but I believe it emerges when the writer writes their work to that ideal reader, who's someone who already loves their writing, who doesn't have to be sold on the worthiness of the teller, and whom the writer is dying to tell their story. And so their natural voice comes out because they're just like talking to someone who really gets them. So especially since we're trained to write in school, a lot of times our voice can get stilted and we lose touch with our actual voice as storytellers. So to be able to recapture that or to hold on to that as you write is really great, is very important. So yeah, so those were my 16 elements of good writing. These are all of the things, if you've been in my class, that I will always come back to one of these 16 when I'm listening to your work. And my favorite way to teach, as I always say, is to work from the things that you're already writing and to look at what's working and where you have natural gifts and abilities and build on that. Because I believe that once you have the confidence that you have some skill in your writing, you'll naturally want the other elements of your writing to rise to the level of your best writing. So that's my little lecture for today. In terms of our assignment, we're going to work with element, what number is it? 6, figurative language. And I'm going to give you a metaphor assignment, and then I'm going to read you my exercise that I did with it. I can't believe I can't find it. Hold on a second. I printed so many things for you, and now I lost them. Oh, here we go. So what you want to do is pick a character. Now this is either going to be a fictional character or somebody that you know, and you're going to describe them in metaphor, okay? So you're going to write, if this person were a vegetable, they would be a blank, a carrot, an eggplant, a tomato, even though that's really a fruit. You could pick a fruit too. So if this person were a vegetable, they would be a blank. If this person were a car, they would be, if this person were a musical instrument. So I'm going to read you the list of all the things that you can describe a person as. And then if you want, you could choose all of them or you could choose one of them. And use that as a jumping off point for your description of a character. So we have a vegetable, a car, a musical instrument, an animal, a piece of clothing, a color, a foreign country, a type of shoe, or a weather condition. So again, I'll read it to you. If this person were a vegetable, a car, a musical instrument, an animal, a piece of clothing, a color, a foreign country, a type of shoe, or a weather condition, which one would they be? And we're not looking for similes. So we're not saying like, my mother is like a tornado. You would say, my mother is a tornado, right? Because a simile is when you compare it, and a metaphor is when you just go straight for the tornado. So I will read you a brief one that I wrote about my partner. His name is Mark. If Mark were a vegetable, he'd be a leek. Sturdy, strong, and straight, face up to the sun. Bracing, healthy, simple, and grounded strongly into the earth. To remove him would require conscious effort. He'd no more easily be uprooted than a tree. Mark as a leek goes good with potatoes and white wine. So that's a little bit of my metaphorical exploration of my partner, Mark. He is like a leek. He is a leek. All right, so that's it for today. Again, please feel free to email me. My email address is in the comments, or you may have my email address already anyway. All right, take care, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.